Order, order. Robbie Moore to move the motion.
I move that this House has considered E-petitions 639319 and 700013 relating to the sale and misuse of fireworks. And it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Sir Edward. And it was a pleasure to introduce, on behalf of the Petitions Committee, these two petitions today. I know many colleagues, as well as myself, have received countless pieces of correspondence regarding fireworks, and therefore it is no surprise that both E-petitions have received significant amounts of signatures, with the first receiving with the first petition receiving over 50,000 signatures in the first 6 months it ran for. And I'd like to give particular thanks to Chloe Brindley for raising this petition and for her elegant arguments for banning the sale of fireworks to the general public. Chloe outlines many negative impacts of firework use, including animal stress, PTSD, and the impact on our A&E services, and Chloe is in the public gallery today. The second E-petition has kindly been brought to the attention by the House by Alan Smith, who I was privileged to meet last week and who I was pleased to say is also in the gallery, and it is a pleasure to welcome him to the House. The petition itself has garnered over 75,000 signatures, despite only being put forward a month ago. Alan's story is a particularly harrowing one, but one I think that is important when we consider the terrible damage and the very traumatic circumstances that fireworks can do. And I hope that he won't mind me mentioning this, because on the night of the 28th of October 2021, two teenagers under the age went to their local fireworks shop and asked, what are the good ones that can be let off at people? They were not refused service for asking this request, and nor were they ID'd by the owner of the shop. And Sir Edward, later that evening, they would take the fireworks that they had purchased, stuff them, lit, through the letterbox of an 80-year-old Josephine Smith, Alan's mother, starting a fire which then ultimately went on to kill her. Not only was this a shocking tragedy and an outrageous, harrowing act, it shows, without a shadow of doubt, that fireworks are not toys, they are not risk-free, they are weapons if used in that manner and can kill. And whether through accident or malice, 113 people find themselves spending an average of 2 days in hospital after fireworks injuries. Through further research, it suggests that the total number of injuries will undoubtedly be higher. But the impacts of fireworks, as the signatories to these petitions will know, go on far greater than the users. The loud bangs and flashes of fireworks, when in excess, can make the surrounding area feel like a war zone. And in Keighley, which I'm exceptionally proud to represent, fireworks are undoubtedly used throughout all of the year and often well throughout the night into the early hours of the morning, where there are times the whole of the night sky above Keighley is lit up under the constant thunder of fireworks. And let's be clear, whilst the use of fireworks may peak around and in the run-up to bonfire night, this is an issue for many of us throughout the whole of the calendar year. In places like Keighley, indeed many other communities right across the country, many are negatively impacted by the antisocial use of fireworks. Working people who just want to get a decent night's sleep at night can't because of the sheer nuisance fireworks are causing. Unsurprisingly, fireworks have a dramatic effect on those suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Our veterans, quite literally fearing that they have been thrust back into a life or death situation, can be completely debilitated by their use. And other victims of trauma can be triggered, even if the event which led to their condition has no connection to the sounds or sights of fireworks. And I've heard this firsthand just last week when I met with representatives of Anxiety UK, Help for Heroes and the Royal Society of Prevention of Accidents, and the Firework Campaign to prepare for this debate. And can I thank them, Sir Edward, for their time. And just as it can be the case for humans, fireworks can also trigger the fight or flight response in animals. Pets and livestock alike are often terrified by fireworks, which, unlike us, they do not understand the consequences when they are being let off. And of course, this leads not only to incredible distress, but can lead to injury and, in also some circumstances, death of those animals. Even through my own correspondence from constituents across my constituency of Keighley and Ilkley, I have heard of farm animals stampeding as a result of loud bangs, tearing through fences in their panic, injuring themselves and others with the risk of causing road accidents. I've also heard much correspondence about dogs, cats, rabbits, and in fact, in relation to almost every single pet being negatively impacted. And in November, we also learned of the tragic death of Roxy, a baby red panda at Edinburgh Zoo, on bonfire night, who died due to the stress caused by fireworks being let off across the city centre. And there is also wildlife that is also impacted that doesn't have a voice, for whom we must also be conscious of. We often forget, as well as those animals that are more sensitive to sound than us, they are also impacted considerably. What we hear as a distant rumble to them can seem like a much more threatening, intensifying experience. Distressing fireworks are also used as tools for crimes in my own constituency and across the country, as indeed many colleagues in this House have contacted me. We see fireworks being used as weapons against emergency services and the nuisance items that they are used as by antisocial behaviour by youths. In 2021, fireworks attended an incident in my own constituency as they then came under attack by a group of 15 youths hurling fireworks at them. The fact that the individuals were then able to source these fireworks for them to carry out these acts was incredibly distressing from those that were not only impacted, but just shows how easy fireworks are able to be got hold of. There are many more impacts that fireworks can have, not least causing hearing damage, interrupting sleep, and impacting those with sensory processing disorders. But I hope that members here will forgive me when I say that I and others have raised these concerns before. And with this opportunity today, I want to be able to stress that this is something that I am absolutely still concerned about. Before discussing the way forward, I feel it is important to discuss that the existing body of regulations that we have before us, that the sale of fireworks is banned to anyone under the age of 18, as are the largest fireworks used for public use. But that doesn't stop people buying them, and it doesn't stop those individuals selling them to under 18s. Setting any firework off is also banned after 11 p.m, except on certain evenings. But I fear, as in the case of Josephine Smith, that these regulations are not being properly forward, as we all know. I recognise E-petition 6319 calls for a ban. Indeed, almost those all signing this petition, in fact 74% of people widely out there who have got involved with many petitions that we have seen before this House, believe that a ban is the right way forward. But I must admit, I personally am reluctant to endorse bans where they are not completely necessary. But the growing evidence and to the testimony I have heard from the many people that I've spoken to in the run-up to this debate and from the police instances that enforcement will never be enough to tackle this issue. Simply put, once let off, and those who let them off from antisocial behaviour reasons abandon the scene, it is extremely difficult to catch the culprit. Of course, we must recognise the freedom to enjoy fireworks, but above all else, we must also protect the liberties of those so devastatingly affected, because there is certainly no freedom for those who are trapped in their homes across the year because of fireworks misuse. If the illegal use of fireworks cannot be curtailed, the only option we are left with is stricter regulation at the point of sale. Whilst it may be difficult to catch an offender using fireworks, it is surely easier for authorities to ensure regulations are followed at the point of sale and to advise fireworks businesses to use discretion when they fear fireworks may be used improperly. Indeed, a report out just this morning from the campaigner Hamza Reham raised the following rise in stockpiling of fireworks across the Bradford district, with fireworks being bought in bulk and stored in private garages to be sold at a later date. And I have no doubt that this is also going on in other constituencies across the country, and this could be curtailed if we enforced laws already in place. Even a simple requirement to apply for a permit may be a sufficient barrier to cancel out many nuisance buyers of fireworks, who can currently purchase fireworks as easily as a bottle of wine. Stricter requirements could also be introduced, such as raising the age limit. Nonetheless, we must be careful not to force the sale of fireworks underground and create an even more dangerous situation. I hope in this debate many other members will push at the heart of the issue and explore the action we can take, as this issue has been idly discussed for far too long. And I know that many members in this House have raised this time and time again, and I will give way to my neighbour.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Honourable Gentleman for giving way, but for also bringing this really important issue for debate today. Like his own constituents, my constituency next door in Shipley have been raising the concern about antisocial fireworks with me too. Under the last Labour government, the Fireworks Act 2003 and the Fireworks Regulations 2004 did restrict antisocial use of fireworks. Since then, there's been very little action. Does the Honourable Gentleman agree with me it's now overdue time for a review to tighten up these regulations?
And I thank my honourable neighbour and friend from Shipley for raising this in the debate. But the challenge that is put before us is, whilst it may have been previous Labour administrations that brought in those regulations, the stark reality actually on the ground is there has been no real change. There is still antisocial behaviour that is taking place. There is still the misuse of fireworks, and there is still people buying fireworks from places in my constituency, and I suspect hers, under the age of 18 and still getting away with it. And having seen the government's response to both e-petitions that was released earlier today, I still don't believe that the government is willing to go further enough, albeit they have said that they would be willing to listen. And I hope that members will contribute towards the actions that I believe that this government should be taking. And I will give way.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend, and I thank him for introducing this subject. My constituent Annie Riddle said she's been living in Harnham district of Salisbury for 34 years, and 4 dogs have been left in the state of trembling wrecks consequential of the random use of fireworks. Does he agree with me that better public education of just how destructive this is to the health of many people, he's mentioned obviously veterans, but also at the animal kingdom, is quite important to actually change behaviours on the ground, and that must be part of the solution?
And I thank my right honourable friend for his intervention. I absolutely agree that better education is absolutely critical for the wider public, not only for those that will be using it from an antisocial behaviour perspective, but also those that will be organising larger events. Because I have also heard, as part of the evidence that was taken before this debate, that even those that are organising big public events, there is still a negative consequence on those that may have pets at home or wildlife, or implications on farm animals, or indeed other veterans that live in a nearby location. So I think education is absolutely key, but what I would certainly like to see personally is much more tougher provisions in terms of licensing, and also much more resource being put towards enforcement. I would like to commend the Honourable Member for Luton for her private member's bill that is being brought forward to tackle this issue. In my own opinion, the next step forward must be a commitment from the government to undertake proper research and impact assessments into firework regulation, so that we are able to reach a cross-party solution on this issue. Findings from the Petitions Committee, the government and stakeholders have all pointed out that the lack of evidence to any serious policy changes, and therefore we must make sure that the government has the evidence available as quickly as possible, so that it is able to make further legislative changes if it so desires to do so. If a ban or restrictions are necessary, it will take time to implement, and therefore I believe we must also take immediate action. Local councils must be supported to deliver proper enforcement immediately, as must the police to tackle those using fireworks illegally. There is no point in having regulations and laws in place if they are not enforced. And what's more, there is nothing to stop the government from delivering this support right now. E-petition 639319 did receive a response from the previous government. I am glad that the government has also responded to the second e-petition of 700013 this morning. But as I have said, I do believe that the government must go much further in just giving warm words. I hope that this debate will be an opportunity for all members to stress to the Minister the points that they have on behalf of their constituents, and will be able to expand upon that response, as I'm sure he will be able to appreciate that it is something of deep concern to the many petitioners who have signed the debate. So before this debate. So to conclude, Sir Edward, I am not opposed to fireworks in and of themselves, but I would definitely wish to see much tighter licensing provisions, much stronger enforcement, and a change that fireworks can only be used at licensed events. So I say to the government, we simply cannot continue to ignore the growing public demand for change. I hope that today's debate marks the beginning of a real change on fireworks legislation. Fireworks bring joy to many, but their misuse can have devastating effects. When used antisocially, they disturb the peace of an entire neighbourhood, terrify pets and leave vulnerable people trapped in their homes throughout, with the culprits terrorising neighbourhoods, as unfortunately I have seen in Keighley. The petitions before the House today are not one-offs. Indeed, since May 22, 5 other petitions relating to fireworks have been put before Parliament, nor are the concerns of the petitioners without justifications. In the face of such concerns, there must be action, and that cannot occur until we have had the weight of full government policy assessment to decide the best way forward. And if we choose to continue to ignore this issue, then I fear it is inevitable there will be more unnecessary deaths, injuries and traumas for victims of fireworks in the future.
I remind members that they should bob if they wish to be called in the debate. And I should say that 24 members have put in to speak. So I will have to impose from the start a time limit of 6 minutes, because I'm anxious that everybody should get in. And I just remind you that the more interventions there are, the more likely it is that somebody may not get to speak at all. So I now call first on the government side, Jessica Morden.
Sir Edward, and I appreciate the opportunity to take part in what is obviously a wildly popular debate, and therefore will make a short contribution on behalf of the 181 constituents in Newport East who've signed the petitions and the 130 plus who've been in touch on social media. And I apologise profusely for not staying until the end of the debate, as I'm chairing the PLP, and I do thank the Chair for allowing me to do this. I'm also a very regular contributor to debates on fireworks over the years, and this year very proud to be a supporter of my honourable friend for Luton North's private members bill, the fireworks bill, and she does absolutely great work on this subject, and I wish her much success with it. It's actually with a bit of a heavy heart that I take part in these debates, and I have done in my past, because in my youth, which is a while ago, I did have very happy memories of bonfire night, as my late and very lovely dad would insist on fireworks in our back garden. It's fair to say he very much liked risk and hated organised fun of any kind, so we never went to displays. So I do understand why people enjoy fireworks, and I acknowledge that many people use them in a responsible way, and that there are enforcement measures for those who don't. However, I do think the days of a small tin of fireworks in the back garden are long gone, which is why constituents have a keen and passionate interest in this particular issue and regularly raise it with me. Fireworks are bigger, they are louder, they are more powerful than ever before, and they are easily available from unlicensed vendors. And as the Honourable Member for Keighley said, fireworks season now seems to last through autumn and through winter. It's distressing, as the points he's made, all of which I agree with. It's distressing for animals, for constituents who are veterans with PTSD. It's difficult. The antisocial use of fireworks impacts on children and teenagers, and staff in A&E are having to deal with fireworks-inflicted burns. This is a seasonal debate, and we keep returning to it every year. Constituents report having fireworks thrown at them on bus stops, animals being too traumatised to go out, terrorising livestock, fireworks through letterboxes and more. As one constituent put it, a generation that can't smoke but then can buy mini bombs seems bizarre. I'd like to pay tribute to the partnership work that takes place in Newport East around big nights like Firework Night and New Year's Eve between the council, the police and the fire service, and I know it's much appreciated in some of our communities. It's fair to say the vast majority of constituents who have been in touch with me in recent weeks support allowing firework use only for organised display. I absolutely recognise their concerns and I fully support the efforts of my honourable friend for Luton North to restrict their sale to licensed shops, lower the noise limit to 90 decibels and remove the loudest F2 and F3 fireworks from sale. So finally, a big thanks to the police, I'd like to say, for their enforcement work. But let's make their lives easier and the lives of local authorities who are already overstretched by looking again at the legislation. I will.
Just.
Chair, like my honourable friend, I have grown up enjoying fireworks in the garden, especially with my children. Does my honourable friend agree that the step forward may be to reduce the noise levels from what is at the moment 120 decibels to 90 decibels, as is the case in New Zealand, and perhaps have greater enforcement of the times during which fireworks can be let off, and also increasing the age to whom fireworks can be sold in order to enable people to enjoy the family firework occasion, but also to have safeguards in place.
Thank the honourable member for that contribution, and that's some very sensible measures he proposes, some of which are dealt with. I'm sure the honourable member for Luton North will talk about in her contribution. So I think it's time for us to look again at the legislation so that we don't keep returning to these debates year after year and people living in misery. It's time we tackled this. Thank you.
Lisa Smart.
You in the chair, Sir Edward, and I thank very much the honourable member for Keighley for leading this important debate, and I agree with a great deal of his remarks. I also thank the very many petitioners who raised the issue we are discussing today. And as the MP for Hazel Grove, I was not surprised to see my constituency standing out as one of those with the highest number of signatures, highlighting the strength of feeling among my neighbours. The issue of fireworks has been one of the most common topics that my constituents have been in touch about since both before my election in July, when I was a local councillor, and since. And this is also something I care about as the owner of a mischievous rescue dog, Bonnie, who is absolutely terrified of fireworks. And it's both the lights and particularly the noise. And so the period of time between, let's say, the end of October-ish and the new year is always one that's particularly upsetting for her. So we all vaguely know when to expect the beginning of the fireworks season, but these days fireworks don't seem to stop. Many displays and kids enjoying themselves on the estate behind my house seem to occur far outside the typical season. Across the autumn and beyond, there is very little that I can do to prevent the enormous amount of distress that Bonnie goes through each year. Every time she hears the opening whizzes or bangs, she throws herself around the room or across the garden, barking furiously and absolutely terrified. We can only keep her inside with the blinds closed and drum and bass blasting out to block out the noise for so long. The call of nature calls her outside from time to time, and then she's back to being terrified again. And I'm sure that this experience will resonate with the tens of millions of people across the UK that have animals in their own homes. The impact of fireworks is not only felt by pets and their owners, but by all the wildlife across the UK, as well as the many people who have conditions such as PTSD or sensitivity to unexpected noises. We should not have to expect or accept that for many weeks of every single year there are going to be regular and continuous fireworks displays. The Honourable Member for Keighley mentioned the existing regulatory landscape and was right to point out the difficulties in enforcing those regulations. Now, I'm a Liberal, and I don't think we should be banning things just because I find them annoying. But I do think that when my actions harm someone else and my freedoms bump into someone else's, we should look at whether we've got the balance right. And in the majority of states and territories in Australia, for example, it's illegal for members of the public to possess and use fireworks. And in the few regions that do permit public use, they are limited to a small number of very specific holidays. In other states, they're only carried out by trained and licensed pyrotechnicians or those that they have approved and instructed. Now, of course, we must balance the cultural significance and recreational value that fireworks displays on special holidays have with the safety and welfare of people, of pets and of wildlife. And by adopting Australian-style legislation, local authorities would be able to manage their own fireworks calendars, and that would prevent the continuous barrage of fireworks that we regularly face in the last few months of every year. This petition is a mandate from our constituents to act. We need to do more to protect our friends, our families, pets and wildlife from the harmful effects of fireworks. And I would urge the government to take action to reduce the detrimental impact that fireworks have across our communities and adopt similar legislation to that which we see elsewhere. So on behalf of my many constituents who signed these two petitions, and particularly on behalf of my mischievous and pyrophobic rescue dog Bonnie, I am very grateful for the opportunity to discuss these issues today. Thank you.
Rowan.
Thank you, Edward. It's a pleasure to see you in the chair today, and I want to thank the Honourable Member for Keighley for bringing this petition today. And I want to start by saying we have this debate every single year, but it is really heartening to see the widespread support for this debate and for the petitions. And I want to thank every single member of the public who has signed these petitions, who have shared these petitions, because you are making sure that your voices are heard loud and clear here in Parliament, and that is incredibly impressive and to be welcomed. But as I said, I think we have these debates every single year, and they are incredibly well-meaning, and we hear the same thing time and time again. Isn't this awful? Isn't this horrific? Doesn't it have a horrible impact on all of our constituents' lives? And yet we have not seen action on this for 10 years. We have seen nothing change. And so we know that the problems exist. The licensing laws mean that any registered seller, even if they don't have a specialised fireworks sale licence, can sell fireworks during the festive period. That, to me, seems absolutely the wrong way round. At a time when people are going out of their way to buy fireworks for things like Bonfire Night, for New Year's, for Lunar New Year, all of those times, actually, any unlicensed seller can now sell fireworks. That seems a perverse way of doing things. And if it isn't good enough for the rest of the year, why is it good enough for the year when most fireworks are used? And I have heard today that people have said, fireworks, we have this debate around this time of year because we've had a lot of complaints about firework use in our inbox. But actually, for constituencies like mine in Luton North, this is an all-year-round thing. Fireworks have not just become something for a special event, they've become something that happens day in, day out, not even always when it's dark, which is quite bizarre. I've been out on the doorstep in the middle of the day in the summer, and people have said to me, I've got an issue with fireworks, and fireworks have gone off in the middle of the day. And it is that unpredictable nature which causes a huge problem, which is why we want to see that properly licensed, regulated, organised, professional displays are one thing that people can actually plan their lives around, but yet this chaotic, sporadic, very frequent nature and use of very loud fireworks is something very different. And the reason why, and I'll talk about my private member's bill in a minute, but the reason why I think we need to look at licensing is because the existing laws are incredibly difficult to enforce. Just 6 fixed penalty notices have been issued in the last 3 years, just 6, which indicates that there is a serious problem with what we are seeing and how the use of these are enforced. We know the police are overstretched. I'm currently working with Beds Police and Luton Borough Council for a new way of reporting fireworks use. But we need to see things change in terms of solutions. And I am really grateful for all the MPs that have supported my private member's bill, particularly the member for Newport East, Peterborough and Glasgow South West right next to me, because we have to do something different. Because people with PTSD, we know people with young children, we know people that just want to get a good night's sleep are struggling, and incredibly animals. Even last week I was speaking to guide dogs, and the fireworks lobby, very small but very loud, ironically, they tell us, well, you should train your animals better. You can't get better trained than a guide dog, and yet guide dog users were telling me that during fireworks season they cannot take their dogs out because some of them are so frightened, and it's like having a car that doesn't work is how they described it to me. And particularly children with SEND and parents of non-verbal children, they find that incredibly distressing. So what my bill is asking for is 3 simple things. To end the loophole in licensing for sales, so that we see the same regulations throughout the year, that only licensed sellers should be able to sell fireworks, that we limit the sound of fireworks to general public consumption to 90 decibels. That's the sound of a lawnmower. At the moment, the limit is 120 decibels. That is the sound of a rock concert. And thirdly, we need to make sure that the loudest category of fireworks, the category 2 and 3 fireworks, are not available for public consumption. We have seen the damage that they have caused. We have heard how they are being used as weapons. If there was anything else, we'd be talking about banning them outright. But actually, this bill, and I have learnt from my first time round, this is not my first rodeo with a private member's bill on fireworks. This is my second one. We've also seen a surge in the number of online sales of fireworks, which is a real issue. And my bill covers online as well as high street retailers, because we're seeing them advertised on TikTok, on Facebook. These are not places where we should be going to get something that is so dangerous to potentially the user as well as all the people around them. So I'm really grateful that everybody here seems to be quite supportive of my private member's bill. There's something different from previous debates that we've had around fireworks, and that's we've had a change of government and we have a different minister sat there responding, and I hope that he has a different response for us today. Thank you very much.
Lamont.
You in the chair today. Can I start by thanking the petitioners for raising this important issue, and thank my honourable friend, the member for Keighley and Ilkley, for setting out the issues behind this petition so well at the start of the debate. I know from my own mailbag many people are concerned about the unintended impact that fireworks have. Fireworks should be a symbol of joy and happiness, with everyone in awe as they light up the sky. Often they are to celebrate and mark special occasions whilst being surrounded by friends and family. Whether it's a bonfire night, New Year's Eve, or just a simple get-together, there is no doubt that fireworks make for a fun time and bring people together. However, we should not forget that this is not always the case. As we have heard, fireworks can have unintended consequences. People suffering from PTSD and trauma are at a particular risk, as are those with severe mental health issues. Pets and animals often get frightened by fireworks, abandoning their owners to find safety. Others become extremely anxious and, in the worst of cases, tragically pass away. As members have heard, a baby red panda, Roxy, died of distress in Edinburgh Zoo during this year's bonfire night. And for some of my constituents in the Scottish Borders, that is why they have contacted me and encouraged me to participate in this debate this afternoon. A report by the Office of Product Safety and Standards in 2020 stated that noise blasts resulting from fireworks can be particularly stressful to dogs. The report highlights that some farm animals, such as pigs, should not be exposed to the kind of noise levels that fireworks make. Fireworks can also trigger significant behavioural changes in cattle. In the last 13 years, there have been at least 98 horse injuries and 20 fatalities. When it comes to the effects on people, the report states that there were 990 injuries due to the misuse of fireworks in 2005, and there is evidence it can exacerbate stress and anxiety. Now, this raises legitimate questions on how and where fireworks are used and whether they do more harm than good. Now, over the years, greater restrictions have been enacted in Scotland. The Fireworks Scotland Regulations 2004 restrict the times of day when fireworks can be used by the general public. These regulations also restrict the times of day fireworks can be supplied to the general public. However, the most significant piece of legislation affecting firework regulation in Scotland is the Fireworks and Pyrotechnic Articles Scotland Act 2022. Although part of this legislation is still to come into force, this Act will significantly toughen up the laws in this area. It is now an offence to supply and distribute fireworks to persons under the age of 18. Anyone found guilty faces a maximum fine of £5,000 or a 6-month prison sentence. Local authorities in Scotland now have the power to designate firework control zones, which are areas where fireworks are prohibited and cannot be used. In some cities like Edinburgh and Glasgow, additional control zones are coming into force. However, despite this increased regulation of the use of fireworks, concerns still remain. Now, I very much sympathise with those who have been affected by the misuse of fireworks, particularly those who have been directly affected by some terrible acts and who have brought forward the petition. The offenders committing these serious criminal acts should be punished. But I am very reluctant to ban anything. As a society and as a country, I'm worried that we're moving into an extreme nanny state where we rush to ban everything and anything that poses some level of risk. Now, data from the Home Office shows that there have been 7 fatalities from fireworks between 2010 and 2020. Meanwhile, the World Animal Foundation claimed that in the UK, 27 people die a year from accidents involving cows. Now, does this mean, Sir Edward, that we need to ban keeping cows because they pose a risk? If we are to strike the right balance between fun and safety, the starting point must surely be to ensure that the existing rules and regulations for fireworks are always being followed and enforced. The data suggests that misuse is the biggest issue, not the fireworks themselves. So instead of talking about banning, let's talk about personal responsibility. If you are irresponsible with fireworks or commit a crime with a firework, you should face the full force of the law. Let us give local authorities and the police the powers and the resources they need to properly enforce it. Let us learn from different parts of the UK. I've spoken about the different rules we have in Scotland compared to England. Learn from different parts of the UK to understand which interventions are effective and which ones need to be reformed. In conclusion, Sir Edward, I do not support a ban on fireworks altogether, but I do support them being properly regulated and used safely at all times, and hope this is where we can take this debate moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure serving under you. And I would like to thank the member for Keighley and Ilkley for introducing this very important debate, and for all those who organised the petition, and especially my constituents who signed one or other or both of the petitions. So, in Hounslow, we have, as many members here have, almost continuous fireworks through Diwali, Bonfire Night, the birthday of Guru Nanak, and nowadays, never used to happen, I don't think, New Year's Eve. And on New Year's Eve, fireworks can last for 24 hours as local people who hail from different parts of the world let off fireworks with their at the same time as their family and friends back home, or just because they feel like it. Then there's the danger of exploding fireworks. I have a relative who, as a child, lost her eye when the kids were messing around. And one New Year's Eve, we were at a party in our neighbour's house. All the children were no longer in the back room watching films. It was suspiciously quiet. They were in the road, egging on a group of very drunk young men who were just letting off fireworks with no safety measures whatsoever. And this year, yet again, I've had a string of emails this autumn from concerned constituents who almost certainly signed those petitions. As other members have said today, and will do for the rest of this debate, no doubt, common complaints include fireworks taking place in well after midnight, up to 1, sometimes 3 a.m., disturbing families and those doing shift work. People don't object to public displays at a social time, but not in the middle of the night. The impact on animals increasingly is cited by constituents, and the RSPCA saying there's increasing evidence that fireworks can have a negative effect on the behaviour and well-being of animals. And constituents cite the increasing number of days in which late night and early morning displays happen over a number of weeks, from October through to New Year. So, Sir Edward, I agree with others. Legislation needs updating for our safety, for our reasonable night's sleep, and for the well-being of our pets and of wild animals. And so I welcome my honourable friend from Luton's bill. Legislation hasn't been updated for 20 years. And what has also changed in 20 years, and as other members have said, fireworks being bought in shops now are far louder and far more powerful than they have been in the past. And as the current legislation says, there's a difference between selling... you can buy from unlicensed traders for Chinese New Year, Diwali, Bonfire Night and New Year, but not at other times. Why the religious discrimination in favour of some and not others? How does that work in a highly diverse constituency like mine, where people celebrate, often with fireworks, many days and anniversaries and other religious festivals? Or sometimes it's just because they're celebrating Grandad's birthday. Animals don't know that it's a religious holiday or Grandad's birthday. They're equally traumatised, whatever the occasion. So wouldn't it be fair if there was a level playing field, organised licensed displays and quieter, safer fireworks as well? And yes, I certainly will.
For giving way. I just wanted to draw attention to another petition that was handed into Downing Street recently, which also had 1.1 million signatures on it. But I also wondered if my honourable friend would agree that it would be helpful to encourage manufacturers to design and produce quieter fireworks, and whether that would be something that she would agree with.
A friend from Dunstable and Nathan Buzzard is absolutely right. We know that it is possible to buy bright, colourful, exciting fireworks that don't make nearly so much noise, and some jurisdictions already legislate as she says. I also want to add that during the fireworks season, our hospitals are working even harder than ever, treating what are too often life-changing injuries. Local authorities don't have the resources to enforce this 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. legislation. So in my experience, the law that aspect of the law isn't worth the paper it's written on. I'd support restricting the use of fireworks in some way. In Scotland, it allows local councils to designate firework-free zones in areas where fireworks are likely to have a greater impact on animals, the environment and vulnerable people. Or has already been mentioned having a decibel level, as in New Zealand, which has brought it down, the sound level down from 120 decibels to 90. And certainly addressing who can sell them in what circumstances. When I was very young, I was working for a community organisation, and I was sent to buy the fireworks for the Bonfire Night display my association was organising. I found the address of the seller, a flat high up in a tower block in Camden, packed from floor to ceiling with boxes and boxes of fireworks. If that's not a justification for licensing sellers, I don't know what is.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's a privilege to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Keighley for leading this debate. I'd really like to begin with thanking the so many people from Cheadle constituency for signing the petitions we're discussing today, and to all those that have contacted me over the last few months regarding the sale and use of fireworks in our community. Firework displays are incredibly popular in Cheadle. A number of organisations and community groups hold these events throughout the year. These include events around bonfire nights and New Year celebrations, as well as religious and cultural festivals such as Diwali and Chinese New Year. The vast majority of these events are held and managed properly and adhere to all the necessary guidelines and laws set out. Events such as these are vital in bringing people together and building community cohesion across Cheadle. But that said, many of my residents have contacted me about the other side of firework use, which relates to what a lot of these petitions are referring to. The growth in antisocial behaviour across the country has alarmed many of us, and Cheadle is no exception. With cuts over the last decade to local authority and police spending has seen our youth services reduced to below the bare minimum and on-street policing stretched to breaking point. And this has resulted in more and more antisocial behaviour in some areas of my constituency, leaving many of my residents feeling helpless and unsafe in their area. And as with all cases of antisocial behaviour, it peaks and dips in patterns depending on what time of the year it is. Summer months, for example, can be terrible as the lighter evenings lead to more and more young people staying outside with little to do, whilst a period just before Christmas, when fireworks sales are up, is another period of peak activity. And I'd like to make this a very important point, that this isn't a demonisation of young people. For 10 years, central government, and in some cases local government, has let our young people down. We've seen young people's services systematically decimated in this country to the point where you can hardly even call it a service anymore. Youth centres are now a thing of the past. After-school clubs and services are regularly cut as schools manage even tighter budgets. And as the cost of living crisis grows, sports clubs and other activities have become too costly for many families living in my area. All in all, many young people in my constituency have been given a raw deal and are left with literally nothing to do. So, of course, without the appropriate structures and guidance around them, a small minority of young people will find less productive ways to fill their time. And this leads to the issues that some of my residents are facing today. Residents like Stephanie, who on her way back home one evening was set upon by a group who threw a firework at her. Stephanie was incredibly lucky. She is disabled and the firework missed her by just a few inches. And when she told me, she could literally feel the heat of the rocket go past her head. I've also been contacted by Di, who's been forced to provide what she calls a cocktail of drugs to her dog throughout October and November due to the incessant noise and flashes from fireworks being set off in her street. Her dog, she tells me, is terrified and can only be calmed through sedation. It puts so much strain on Di and has caused her huge amounts of stress and anxiety. And as well as Stephanie and Di, I've been contacted by residents who suffer from PTSD, some of whom are veterans. Fireworks cause huge amounts of mental stress to these people, adding further impacts on their mental health and quality of life. So what can we do? For me, enforcement is the issue here. The current law puts much emphasis on councils to ensure that fireworks are being sold correctly and legally, and it's the responsibility of local councils and the police to ensure that any breaking of the law is tackled and those punished appropriately. But in a world where councils are being forced to cut more and more services and police chiefs are literally writing to the Chancellor to say they can't fund the officers they currently have, is it no wonder that our constituents feel not enough is being done? It's clear that the solution is to tackling this issue lies with our local authorities and giving them the tools to crack down on those shops and businesses that are selling fireworks illegally. We need to ensure the police have the resources to tackle antisocial behaviour when it peaks, such as during fireworks season, and that these crimes are then put through the system as efficiently as possible so effective punishments are delivered and those impacted are given the justice they deserve. We have to be able to provide this level of service when it comes to tackling antisocial behaviour. Otherwise, any new laws or guidance the government produces will just be as ineffective as the laws we currently have. And of course, parallel to this, we need a statutory youth service that provides and guides and helps young people reach their full potential. Finally, Sir Edward, there are two things raised in this position that I would be interested in further discussion. Firstly, the regulation of quieter fireworks for private use. This makes complete sense to me, and I would be very supportive of this. And secondly, providing local authorities the power to declare firework-free zones may be a useful tool in tackling nuisance hotspots. Whilst the police and council resources are stretched, this could help concentrate efforts in particular areas. However, it should not be used as a way to escape the fact that more funding is required for our emergency services and local authorities. So, Edward, I'd like to thank my residents for contacting me about this issue, and I'd like to say to them that I understand how troubled and worried they are by what is happening in their communities, and I'll do all I can to push the government to ensure the police and Stockport Council have the resources needed to tackle this issue.
Andy Beales.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd also like to thank the honourable member for bringing this very important petition for us to debate here today. Fireworks have many positives, and we've heard a number of them already. Many of our earliest memories are often related to those times we've come together, our first sparkler in the garden with friends and family, bringing in the new year with loved ones, and those important cultural and religious events. They're often times for unity and for the community to come together, and I think that's important that we don't lose sight of the positive role that fireworks can play in our society. But, as we've heard painfully often today, there are often serious consequences from fireworks misuse. And for many, fireworks season isn't a time of joy, but of fear and of dread each year. I've heard, like many other members today, from many people in my constituency who are concerned about the impact of fireworks on animals, on loved ones, on vulnerable people and veterans in our community. And these are very serious and legitimate concerns, and I'm pleased we have the time here today to fully consider them And I think the strong interest from members in this House shows how strongly we're taking these issues. The current regulatory framework was designed to support people to enjoy fireworks whilst lowering the risks and dangers and disruption to pets, to property and to people. And there is an open question on whether the existing firework regulations strike the right balance between enjoyment and the negative effects. And so I welcome the government's commitment to engage with businesses, consumer groups and charities to gather evidence on the issues with and the impacts of fireworks, which has recently been outlined in a number of parliamentary responses to parliamentary questions. And I hope this will lead to a more formal review of the fireworks policy and legislative framework to see if it is still fit for purpose. With the growth, as we've heard today, of online sales and the size and decibel limit of firework use domestically, it seems to me the right time for a full review of regulations. That said, regulation is only an effective tool if properly enforced. I've heard from many of my constituents that the existing rules around fireworks are already broken without consequence or punishment. And it strikes me that whilst it's easy to regulate for fireworks sold in shops or online, it is much harder to enforce those regulations once they've been bought. And I hope that in future, as well as changing regulations, we give full and due consideration to how this issue can be addressed too, and ensure that enforcement can be fully self-funding through tougher fines for those breaching regulations.
My honourable friend give way?
Gladly.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. I held a public meeting in my constituency in Rother Valley, and we discussed a lot of the regulations that my honourable friend mentioned, and others have mentioned this debate. But does my honourable friend agree that actually we can do more as a community to perhaps in local villages, in my constituency in Harthill, in Kiverton Park, in Diddington and Maltby, to set aside weekends where we encourage people to enjoy fireworks, but perhaps the rest of the month or the rest of the time we set aside for those that perhaps don't enjoy it?
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for that comment. It's almost like he had a pre-copy of my speech, because I'm just about to turn to that point. I might speak to my researcher in case it's been leaking my emails. But I think that's an important point, and I think it must be said that the public displays of fireworks that many of us were used to are often a thing of the past. You know, it was common that in any village, in any town, you could go to the green on important occasions and there'd be a public display of fireworks, often led by the community and the local authority, often free. And far too often now, those public displays are either not free and they're at very high cost for a family, or, as is more the case, not taking place at all. I remember very much so going to the Thames each year with my family from Uxbridge and South Ruislip to the centre of London to enjoy those displays. And now they are heavily ticketed and heavily priced, and many have now turned to individual private displays in their gardens as a result. So I do hope we will give consideration to my member's point, and how we can encourage collective displays that are much better regulated and, as you say, much better communicated to local residents. To conclude, I think it is the time now for a full and detailed review of the fireworks regulatory framework, looking at enforcement as well, so we can balance the needs of those who have legitimate desires to celebrate, to bring their families and communities together, but striking the balance and preventing the significant issues of misuse and overuse of fireworks. Thank you.
And I'm grateful to the honourable friend for Keithley for bringing this debate to this chamber. Fireworks, as we've heard, can be a very polarising subject, and in the run-up to this debate, like many others, I've had countless emails from animal lovers in my constituency who want to see certain fireworks banned, with noise limits and other restrictions introduced. But I've also had briefings from fireworks fans and lovers of our bonfire night traditions who worry about moves to change the law. Someone who's also always understood both sides of that debate is Alan Smith. And it's on Alan's behalf that I speak today. As my honourable friend for Keithley has said, Alan is the son of my constituent Josephine Smith. She was a beautiful 88-year-old lady from Haroldwood who lost her life in a house fire after a lit firework was stuffed through her letterbox in October 2021. Now, Alan is in the gallery today, and I'm very grateful to him for his courage in highlighting an issue that has caused him and his family such pain and trauma. Alan recently came to Parliament to speak to me, and I know that he's also spoken to my honourable friend for Keithley. He described the role that Guy Fawkes Knight has always played in his happy family when growing up.
one of the few times of the year that everybody gets together. Each year, like many families, his dad Derek would go to the shop to buy a little display box, a pack of sparklers and maybe a pack of rockets. Josephine would make the jacket potatoes, their 2 ponies were put in their stables and the cattle were put in another field, and their dog would go into the house with the radio on. In raising his own family, Alan always had a fireworks display or himself in the garden or attended a local organised display. His experience was like that of countless other constituents of ours. But on the 28th of October 2021, those happy memories and traditions were upended. Around 9 o'clock at the night, he was woken by his wife Lisa with the words he still hears every day: "Al, your mum's house is on fire." When he rushed to Josephine's home, he recalls seeing emergency services outside the building and then seeing his mother's body brought lifeless in a fireman's arms. The scene, he says, was like being in a horror movie. A fire officer later came over to say, "We found a firework just inside the door." Early the next morning, the family were told that arrests had been made. An 18-year-old and 15-year-old had put a firework deliberately through Josephine's door. They were later charged with arson and manslaughter, and during the trial at the Old Bailey, CCTV of the night in question was shown. It showed teenagers laughing and joking with the salesperson. I've seen the CCTV with Alan, and it is very, very worrying. The conversation from the two youths included the following: "People are going to get terrorised tonight," and then they say, "We're going to throw them at the police." The person manning the shop goes on to say, "You can hold them, throw them, do what you like with them." Alan's entire family were distraught. 2 stupid boys had been sold fireworks by a man with apparently years of experience in selling them, yet he had full knowledge of their intentions. Both of those young people are now serving custodial sentences, but then a further trial had to take place of the shop owner and the sales assistant. The 2 youths, as Alan says, were stupid, irresponsible thugs who hadn't had the best of childhoods, and they weren't even thinking about that havoc that was caused in their lives that night. In contrast, the retailer was a grown man with years of experience in selling fireworks, yet he still decided to sell them to a minor who had stated their own intentions to terrorise. Fireworks for sale, the shop involved, was then fined in the region of £17,000. The seller himself was fined £1,200 and received a 6-week sentence, which was suspended for 12 months. Now, the actions of the shop that night made Alan question whether the laws and the regulations of the sale of fireworks are robust enough, and that brings me here today, debating the petition that Alan started from his grief and his desire not to see future tragedies play out like that which led to the loss of his beautiful mother. The debate around the use of fireworks creates a great deal of division, but despite that tragedy, Alan can still see both sides of this argument. Arguing and insulting each other, he says, is not the way to a sensible and mutually agreeable solution to this problem. He asks for a sensible, respectful debate so that those who wish to enjoy fireworks on the few important days of the year can do so, and in turn, those who have pets, PTSD, mental health issues and so on, only have to manage their situation on a handful of dates a year. The fireworks that were used to take Josephine's life were bought on a whim on a local high street, and he asked whether a more robust licence requirement might have prevented her death. Now, the Minister's kindly agreed to meet me and Alan in the new year, and so I just want, before that date, to have ask some very brief questions on Alan's behalf. First, he asks whether fireworks can currently be used from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night, 365 days of the year. Would a 4 o'clock in the afternoon to a 10 o'clock p.m. window be more acceptable? Second, F2 fireworks are required to have a safe distance of 8 metres, while the safe distance for F3 fireworks is 25 metres. With the vast majority of UK gardens not meeting that minimum size, is it safe to use them in private gardens, Alan asks. Third, fireworks can be bought easily on the high street. It was an impulse that resulted in Josephine's death. Do regulations around high street sale need to change? 4, even fireworks that are set off legally at organised displays often don't take into account the surroundings. Should there be safe buffer zones around such establishments? Many debates have taken place over years, and the response is often that the industry is already heavily regulated and that the regulations are adequate. So I ask on Alan's behalf, and on behalf of everybody whose constituents are affected by this, is now the time to look at this issue much more deeply so that future tragedies like that which affected Josephine do not happen.
Joseph, are you standing? No, you're not standing then. OK, I'll call Daniel Francis.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. Can I also pay tribute to Alan and his family and that horrific story we've just heard, and thank the member for Keithley for bringing forward this debate on behalf of the Petitions Committee today. as we've heard, as a nation of animal lovers, it's deeply upsetting to see those stories that we've heard regarding pets and wild animals in distress live fireworks, but equally for people with PTSD, for children with SEND, those issues that they experience. And I know from my postbag that I've got a growing number of constituents across Bexheath and Crayford who write to me about those issues and the current issues there are with regulations. I remember being a councillor those 20 years ago when the regulations were introduced, and I would say that there was improvement at the time, but clearly there continue to be issues that we see today. As we know, under the current legislation, members of the public are not required to have any form of licence or training to let off consumer fireworks, and public displays are controlled during set times, but private displays can go well into the night. And a recent study by the RSPCA found that as many as 14 million Britons plan to have a private display each year. So, going back to issues for pet owners, we know that dog owners report their dogs are scared of fireworks and explain the exhibit the 5 signs of stress. And for pet owners, they say they've got no choice but to try and manage their pets as fireworks remain out of their control and they can't remove those triggers. Again, as we've heard, those current regulations exist where you can have fireworks alighted past 11 p.m. on 4 nights of the year, when that cut-off's extended to 1 a.m. But under the current rules, it's impossible really to predict when fireworks might happen, especially around that time of year. I know in my area of South East London, that is a nightly occurrence for a month or two really as we enter the autumn, into the early hours, and that continues. I welcome the Private Member's Bill my honourable friend for Luton North brought forward and those asks that she's asked of the Minister. And I'd also, therefore, hope that the Minister can outline in conclusion today those plans that we may be able to see for stricter enforcement for the sale of fireworks, for more powers to be given to local authorities like mine in London Borough of Bexley to stop the disturbance, and how some of those asks in my honourable friend's Private Member's Bill can be brought forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, It's of course a pleasure to serve under your chairship. Sir Edward, like many in this debate, I've also been calling for tougher action on the misuse of fireworks for many years now, because it is of great concern to many of my constituents in Bradford East. Across our community, the inconsiderate and antisocial use of fireworks by a small minority is causing misery. And I think it is important, like a number of colleagues have emphasised, there is a small minority. Many people do use fireworks, like members have highlighted, in a much considerate manner. And as we've heard, families have been kept awake at night, residents are disturbed during the day, and vulnerable groups such as children with sensory sensitivities and the elderly have been disproportionately impacted and affected. And I've written to ministers on a number of occasions over the last decade, calling for stronger licensing powers, reduced noise levels and restrictions on the sale of fireworks. Yet, over the last decade, ministers have failed to act. And time again, I've been told, and they've insisted, that existing laws are sufficient. But this response ignores the reality on the ground, as we're hearing here today. And the question we must ask is, if powers are adequate, then why is it so many of our communities feel that their concerns are being ignored? Why are so many people, residents, councils, charities, calling for change? So let's be clear, and let me actually also be clear that I'm not calling for a ban, a complete ban on fireworks. Of course I'm not, but I, alongside my constituents, are calling for sensible and balanced approach to regulation, one that ensures fireworks can be enjoyed safely without causing undue harm and distress. The issue of fireworks misuse is not unique to Bradford, as we've heard here today, although the impact on our city is clearly felt. Residents have shared their harrowing experiences. Meanwhile, campaigns such as Ban the Menace Fireworks, a local initiative, is supported by 30,000 signatures, and the signatures continue to rise, which all highlight the devastating impact of late-night fireworks on the public. Quite rightly, animal welfare organisations, as has been mentioned here today, including the PCSA and Dogs Trust, have made it clear the distress caused to pets, livestock and wildlife is unacceptable. And these charities have called for clear, achievable reforms. Sir Edward, it is clear, and a number of honourable members have hinted at this, that the current legislation is outdated and isn't working and is insufficient. Of course I will.
He's woken at 3 a.m. in the morning. This is an antisocial behaviour. We have to make sure we address this. And as you say, that the current legislation isn't working. And actually, a reduction in the decibel limit wouldn't diminish the joy. In fact, could increase the joy, because it could increase accessibility for people to be able to attend these fireworks, and also diminish the terrible impacts that we've heard today, from Roxy to the tragic story that we've heard from the Galloway.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. Of course, she's absolutely right. Those that are responsibly using them, I think, would be little concerned about the reducing of the noise level, and it's actually a sensible call that many people, including my constituents, charity groups and others, have called for many years now. And so while these laws, the current laws, restrict the hours during which fireworks can be set off and impose age restrictions, as we've heard, they do little to prevent antisocial behaviour that we see in our communities. Much of the misery is caused through the antisocial behaviour. And local authorities and police forces, including my own Bradford Council and West Yorkshire Police, have repeatedly stated that their hands are tied by inadequate laws and lack of resources. And despite these challenges, can I take this opportunity to commend Bradford Council, my local authority, for its proactive approach in working with venues and other parties to reduce the antisocial use of fireworks and calling for stricter laws on noise levels and sales. And at this point, I will also say, any criticism of local authorities is perhaps, I feel, not warranted, because the reality is, I think, if local authorities did have those extra powers that they've been calling for many years, certainly during my time in this place, then they would, of course, deal with it differently. And also, we must not forget the point that actually over the last decade, trading standards and our police force have had resources massively reduced, which all actually goes to impacting the enforcement element of this. So I will consistently argue that councils need more powers to tackle this issue effectively. And in recent years, we've heard from my honourable friend, the member for Bradford South, who previously brought a bill, and today my honourable friend, the member for Luton North, who does some fantastic work in this area and, of course, has my full support. And we continue, the measures they have brought to Parliament are backed by many public petitions and signed by thousands in all our constituencies. So that's why, Sir Lee, I am urging the government to take immediate steps. This is not a call to end fireworks. Certainly my call is not, and I hope that call is supported by others. Fireworks can and should be a source of joy, community and celebration, but their misuse is causing distress, harm and disruption to too many people. And it's time for the government to listen to our communities, empower councils and put in place sensible, enforceable regulations that balance enjoyment with responsibility. So I would very much, the Honourable Minister and I have worked together for many years, and I know he is somebody who absolutely understands this. So therefore I urge him today to address 4 points in particular: stronger licensing and enforcement powers, reduction of noise levels, restrictions on the sale of fireworks and further powers, enforcement powers, not just to local authorities, but trading standards and other enforcement bodies to allow us to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Edward, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And I must also thank the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for opening this important debate on the sale and misuse of fireworks. Like many people, young and old, I enjoy the magic of fireworks, lighting up the night sky, bringing joy and wonder. As a former chemistry teacher, I can't help but become immersed in the science of fireworks. The science of the colours, each and every precisely timed explosion. However, my enthusiasm is tempered by my awareness of the darkest side of fireworks when they are misused. I know firsthand of the devastation that can unfold when fireworks fall into the wrong hands. These are not toys. They are powerful explosives with the potential to cause life-changing injuries and even death. And I would like to share my condolences to the family and loved ones of Josephine, the emergency workers and all affected by that tragedy. When misused, fireworks will endanger lives and put communities at risk. I'm also a mom to Bruce, a 14-year-old pet Labrador. Ironically, as a gun dog, Bruce is petrified of fireworks. And there's very little I can do to reassure him when he's left trembling and distressed. Many of my constituents in Wolverhampton North East have shared similar stories about their pets, about terrified cats hiding under furniture, to horses panicking and injuring themselves and others. Animals are not the only ones that are petrified. There are people, so many people living with PTSD, but particularly veterans, and fireworks are a source of profound distress. Combat Stress report a surge in calls for support during this season, as the bangs and flashes of fireworks can mimic the sounds of frontline combat. These triggers can leave veterans grappling with flashbacks and overwhelming anxiety. Children are also at risk. Over 550 children were taken to A&E near Bonfire Night in 2021, with most injuries occurring at private displays, many suffering life-changing burns to their hands, their face or eyes, and these scars, both physical and emotional, can last a lifetime. Our current legislation is simply not enough. Fireworks can be purchased online with relative ease and used daily, 365 days a year, with limited restrictions. This easy access undermines our ability to protect the most vulnerable. So to address this, I would welcome further debate for a series of changes, including further restriction in sales to licensed shops, to restrict firework use for specific celebrations such as Guy Fawkes Night, New Year's Eve and Diwali, to mention a few. Reduce maximum noise levels to 90 decibels to minimise distress for animals and those that are sensitive to sound. Enforce more robust and stricter checks on retailers, including mandatory age verification and increase price thresholds to discourage reckless use. Public support for better legislation is overwhelming. In just the last few months, I've had more than 60 Wolverhampton North East residents raise concerns with me personally. A recent RSPCA survey found that 91% of respondents support quieter alternatives, and a significant majority believe that these would be just as enjoyable as traditional fireworks. So, Sir Edward, fireworks can bring communities, families and friends together, a time of joy and celebration. But for too many, they bring fear, trauma and harm. So I urge the government to review current legislation and take action to protect our communities, animals and those that are vulnerable as well. With this, we can ensure that fireworks are used responsibly, bringing joy, not distress, to all. Thank you.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Sir Edward, and it's a pleasure to serve under the chairmanship. I'd also like to thank the honourable member for Keighley and Ilkley for bringing this debate, which has a specific resonance in my community and in my constituency, as he mentioned. Because when Edinburgh Zoo told me what had happened to the baby red panda, whose birth we had all welcomed and celebrated just a few days before, my stomach dropped. It was heartbreaking. What terror she must have felt, alone in the dark, bombarded by loud noises she couldn't have understood and with no comfort. We later learned that her mother had also probably died as a result of stress caused by fireworks. I thought then about the other animals, not just in Edinburgh Zoo, but across the country. My own dog had paced the floor, barking, running in from the garden, terrified, when the first of what seemed like hundreds of fireworks began going off. But worse, I thought about the accident and emergency departments who would deal with burns. And I did think about instances, sadly, like the heartbreaking story we've heard of Josephine, and I'd like to pay tribute to her family and thank them for allowing her story to be shared here today. As others have said, I'm reluctant to ban fireworks, partly, I suppose, because as a child, I loved bonfire night. As a parents of young children, our group of friends loved the annual firework display, with hot drinks and snacks organised by the school. Hogmanay, for me, is defined by the awe-inspiring firework displays from Sydney to New York as they mark their respective midnights. And Edinburgh, of course, is always a highlight. I've always believed that the availability of fireworks for those spectacular organised public displays was part of a valuable expression of celebrations. Now I'm not so sure, and that's why I welcome the private member bill from the honourable member from Luton North. We need to somehow limit the noise levels, especially those of fireworks sold to the public. Perhaps the time has come to question our attitude, if not through legislation, but certainly our attitude to fireworks. And we need to think about how we prevent celebrations descending into anti-social nuisance. I know a lot of people would agree with us. They've signed the petitions, after all. They want something done, and it's time we listened. We know from official figures that around 2,000 people visit accident and emergency departments with firework-related injuries every year, many of them severe burns which take long-term treatment. And sadly, Roxy, the red panda cub, is not the only animal casualty. The Kennel Club says that around 80% of dog owners notice their pets shivering, barking excessively, hiding, howling and crying, all as a result of stress caused by fireworks. The British Veterinary Association says some animals suffer such terror they have to be put down. Now, it may seem unusual to some people that the death of one baby red panda in the zoo should cause such outrage, but perhaps it's the irony of an endangered species, legally protected across Asia, being carefully looked after and bred by one of the world's most respected zoological societies, and yet utterly defenceless against noisy fireworks. Or perhaps it's the innocence of a tiny orphaned creature that tugs at our heartstrings. But whatever the reason, I think it's time that the UK government paid attention to the people who've signed the petitions, who have said that we have to find a way of preventing the damage that is done every year.
On that point,
certainly.
I thank my honourable friend because, like her, I have had multiple complaints from Slough constituents concerned about the impact of fireworks on the most vulnerable, the children and pets, particularly when it comes to fireworks being set off by people in their gardens or even illegally in public places. In fact, according to recent research, Slough has 18 fireworks-related events, displays or shops per 10 square miles, the highest, Sir Edward, of any town in the UK. Does my honourable friend agree with me that centrally held events are often safer, more considerate and limit the environmental impact on our local areas?
Thank you very much. I would agree with the honourable member that that is often the case. Does still leave the problem of noise, which I think is central to this. Now, in Scotland, we have the unusual situation that the regulation of the sale of fireworks is reserved, but the use of fireworks is devolved. And that's meant that we've been able to see our local authorities, like Edinburgh, bring in trial control zones. And Edinburgh Zoo welcomed this, but have suggested that silent fireworks, or at least quieter fireworks, may be the solution. Others want an outright ban, or these specially controlled areas. Certainly, as I say, Edinburgh did introduce them this year, but unfortunately, they could not select the area around Edinburgh Zoo in my constituency. Whatever the solution, we have to find it, and quickly, or accept that fireworks and the displays will be consigned to the past because they're too noisy, they're stressful for animals, and they're dangerous for people. Thank you.
Zubi Ahmed.
Can I thank my right honourable friend for Keithley for securing this debate and on restricting public sale of fireworks. This has clearly strong public support, including my own constituency of Glasgow South West. I'm delighted to support my honourable friend, the member for Luton North, in introducing her private member's bill to ban the sale of the loudest fireworks, and so that fireworks are only purchased now from licensed premises. If this bill is passed, the public sale of fireworks would be meaningfully restricted all over Britain, including in Scotland. And I would like to add to the debate by sharing some of the adverse experiences that have taken place in my own constituency of Glasgow South West. Pollokshields is an area of my constituency that has for many years suffered the impact of over-the-counter fireworks on bonfire night and the weeks in and around it. I have seen some of the disasters that have taken place working as a junior doctor many years ago in my local A&E as a result of fireworks. Not only burns, but also penetrating injuries from increasingly higher velocity of more sophisticated fireworks. This year in Pollokshields, the situation could have been helped by a local bylaw being introduced using a firework control zone, but devastatingly, the paperwork for this was put in too late by Glasgow City Council, and it did not come into fruition. Instead, what happened was that for the weeks in and around the 5th of November, Pollokshields residents, my constituents, were subjected to loud, intrusive fireworks being set off from roads, pavements, from inside cars, and everywhere else in between. On bonfire night itself, there were fires on roundabouts, disturbances into the early morning of November the 6th, with even the police fearing for their safety. And this fear was not an abstract fear, because in the year previously, 40 police officers across the city of Glasgow had been injured in fireworks-related incidents. In Pollokshields, in the morning after, shrapnel was left in and around parks and gardens, risking injury to children, and remnants of the fires were still able to be seen down the main promenade of Albert Drive. But despite all of this criminality on their doorstep, community council members led by Chair Mohammed Amin, local schools and local residents engaged in a massive clean-up operation to bring back dignity to the streets that once were their own. I also held an emergency public meeting for the community where members engaged with police and councillors in an attempt to reconcile what had taken place and also to raise concerns. The result of this was that the police, spending many of their precious resources scouring through hours of CCTV to finally make arrests and send that strong signal that criminality will not be tolerated in our community. I wish to place on record my thanks to Inspectors Hogg and Thompson of Police Scotland for their tireless efforts in holding those responsible to account. Sir Edward, Glasgow South West is probably the most culturally diverse community in Scotland. Often fireworks are used in festivals and religious celebrations. I personally know the significance of these, and they should, of course, be facilitated. But it is time to accept that there need to be controls on general sales, and they need to be curtailed for the common good. Over and above the impact of fireworks on pets, children and the vulnerable, I would also note the answer given to the question asked by my honourable friend, the member for Poole, on October 30th, regarding an impact assessment of the noise fireworks makes on the mental health of veterans. It's notable there has been no impact assessment done whatsoever. At a time where our mental health services are stretched beyond recognition, we must be cognizant of this. Veterans can often suffer from PTSD, as has been mentioned, and indeed other mental health issues, and fireworks are a recognised trigger of this. Directing fireworks to controlled settings, I believe, has many benefits over and above simply safety. I think they can become a focus for community cohesion and a stimulus for small businesses to diversify into servicing these events. So moving forward, I hope to work constructively on the fireworks bill with members across all parties, because this is something that needs to be sorted for a modern society, and it is clear from this petition that society demands it. Thank you.
Ms Jarvis.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I thank the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for bringing forward this important debate. I would also like to pay tribute to Josephine's family. Fireworks have been a part of our celebrations and traditions for years. Whether it's a public display or a family gathering with sparklers and sausages, they can bring joy and excitement. For some people, however, including hundreds in my constituency of Eastleigh, fireworks are more than just a spectacle. They are a source of profound distress. As we have heard, for those living with PTSD, dementia, or other mental health challenges, can find themselves with the unexpected bangs and flashes becoming deeply disorienting and distressing. For shift workers, including our NHS staff, and for those with young children, the sudden noises can be incredibly disturbing. And of course, it's not just human beings who are impacted. As I know from personal experience with a much-missed rescue dog who was petrified every November and New Year's Eve, fireworks can be terrifying for our four-legged friends. Research by the Blue Cross tells us that 70% of pets are affected by fireworks, with many trembling in fear, hiding for hours, or even becoming physically ill. Horses startled by fireworks have been known to suffer injuries, and sadly, there have been cases of animals losing their lives as a result of stress caused by fireworks. We need to strike a balance. Public firework displays provide a structured and predictable environment, minimising unexpected noise and allowing people to prepare. But private fireworks, when used carelessly and at unexpected times of the year, or in instances of antisocial behaviour, can amplify the distress for both people and animals, and that's where our collective responsibility comes in. So can the Minister tell us today what steps the government is taking to address the concerns of people living with PTSD, dementia, or other vulnerabilities who are disproportionately affected by fireworks? I support calls to reduce the noise limits of F2 and F3 fireworks to 90 decibels and to enhance legislation governing the use and sale of fireworks. Will the Minister consider introducing measures to set stricter noise limits for fireworks sold for private use to ensure they are safer and more inclusive for both people and animals? Finally, I would like to echo the concerns of my honourable friend, the member for Cheadle. Ultimately, it is our emergency services, our NHS and our vets and animal rescue centres that have to pick up the pieces. The time for a proper review of the fireworks legislation is long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure to serve under you in the chair today, and also thank the honourable friend for Keighley and Ilkley for introducing this debate. In the days running up to November the 5th this year, Chair, I met by chance at an event in Edinburgh an off-duty police officer who lives in my constituency, and he explained to me that he was injured on Guy Fawkes Day in 2023, and he'd still not made a full recovery. He was one of just 62 police officers injured after being targeted with fireworks and other projectiles as part of a significant outbreak of antisocial behaviour around Guy Fawkes Night that year. And I stress other projectiles because it's not just fireworks, but fireworks are part of the catalyst for that antisocial behaviour, and they're also obviously extremely dangerous. And when I talk about antisocial behaviour, I mean, all of us know that this is just a euphemism. It's just outright lawlessness at times we're confronted with at Edinburgh in relation to fireworks. In the days running up to Guy Fawkes, I keep wanting to call it Fireworks Night, In the days running up to Guy Fawkes Night this year, I met with 2 community police officers to support a local shopkeeper who was concerned about shoplifting. Both were set to be on duty on the 5th of November, and both have been through so-called public order training. I had to wish them both good luck. And that's shameful that we know that this violence is coming on the 5th of November, and all we can really do as an MP is wish the police officers good luck. We should be empowering them and also protecting them. When the night came in Edinburgh South West, we saw disorder in Sighthill, Oxgangs, Calder Road and Broomview. Thankfully, we only saw one injury, a female police officer. Nevertheless, the police were clear, and I will quote them here: "The levels of violence and aggression police officers, fire service and ambulance service personnel were faced with in some areas was wholly unacceptable." The police said that residents were, and I'll quote them again, left terrified as serious disorder took place in their communities, whilst vital bus services that allow safe travel across our city were violently attacked. And no members don't know Edinburgh well, but I will list the bus services that were affected, just to give you a scale of what happened. So Lothian buses services 2, 12, 14, 21, 30, 46, 48 and 400. Now, there's many jobs where people's partners worry about them when they go to work, but driving a bus should not be one of them. So, and really, we have to take steps to tackle this. The police are still hunting down those responsible. So far, several houses have been searched under warrant and several vehicles seized. There have been 27 people arrested in Edinburgh, and they have been charged with 64 offences. The police showed me a huge stash of fireworks that they took out of one car on the 5th of November. The driver had set himself up as a mobile fireworks delivery service. He was cautioned and charged accordingly. I do not understand how one person was able to buy that volume of fireworks. My office is currently engaging with communities impacted by the disorder to ask them what they think needs to change. There's fantastic community partnership work going on to try to tackle the causes of antisocial behaviour of all types. But people are telling me where fireworks are concerned, we have to do more to tackle both their supply and use. In Scotland, we already have a mix of dispersal zones and firework control zones across the country, and in particular in Edinburgh, to try to control the problem. Firework control zones are designed to reduce the negative effects of fireworks on the environment, vulnerable groups, and also support animal welfare. Essentially make it illegal to set off fireworks, including within private property. But imagine the job of the police trying to identify who's letting a firework off in their back garden. How are they supposed to enforce that? I mean, Israel's Iron Dome comes to mind, but perhaps not applicable in this setting. The Scottish Government said that the control zones, and I'll quote them here, were a key milestone in their journey towards a cultural change in Scotland's relationship with fireworks. So far, I mean, and this isn't a criticism because the legislation is well-intentioned. So far, there's little evidence that it's having impact. A senior police officer told me that the orders were mildly preventative at best. Please do.
Sorry. Making an excellent point, but does he agree with me that in Scotland the issue is about resources as well? The local authorities of Scotland and the police authorities just don't have the resources to police this. I mean, I think you're making the point that the legislation, the rules are there, but the police are concerned about their ability to enforce it. And if you read some of their responses, they are concerned they don't have the resource to police this effectively. So it does come down to money from the Scottish Government going to police and local authorities.
So I support the police. The police both north and south of the border having more resources. I'm one of these people, Chair, who is quite happily to pose next to the police at community events and share those pictures on my Facebook page. But the price I pay for that is to support them in their calls. And you know, what resources do they need to deal with fireworks? Helicopters to see where they're getting launched from? What we need to do is tackle the import and sale of these devices. And we have to be honest about that. Yeah. So the police officer was clear with me, actually. He said that there could be more done at restricting the import and sale of fireworks. That was the point I just made. Now, I do think we'll have to listen to the police on this. The chaos in my constituency, and speaking to police officers, is why I'm here today. We have known fireworks have been dangerous all my life. I can remember warnings on Blue Peter. We used to get told to keep our fireworks in metal biscuit tins. remember those dangerous days. But back then, And we knew back then about the impacts of the fireworks have on animals too. And at this point, I have to mention my cat Millie, because other people have mentioned dogs, but no cats yet. Since then, the fireworks have only got bigger, and their misuse has become an increasingly significant driver for antisocial behaviour. Now, the British Fireworks Association wrote to me, and I'm sure they wrote to others, and they said that fireworks-related injuries account for less than 0.03% of all E&E attendances per year. Please do.
I also read the briefing from the Fireworks Association, and what concerned me is they seem to emphasise the damage that is being caused by providing that figure of a tiny percentage of people who are injured. But would he not agree with me that that ignores the fear, the terror, the trauma of animals and people that members across this chamber have been addressing in this very good debate?
Absolutely. We can't just reduce this to numbers. It's about the human impact. But the 0.03%, there's 25 million attendances at E&E every year. That's 7,500 people. Absolutely incredible. And the British Fireworks Association, they do have a list of actions which I think that the government could pursue. And I think we should engage with that. And I think that these are difficult times for the government finances. So why not fund some of those measures via a levy on fireworks sales? Sorry, I'm almost running out of time. This year, a video was shared locally, and I apologise with Alan Smith for talking about this, about a firework being put through someone's letterbox, which could have started a fire in that house. And we've heard already, but I checked the data, this was shared earlier, between 2010 and 2023, 291 non-fatal firework-related casualties due to fires, 7 fatalities. Now, earlier, the member for Berwick, Roxburgh and Selkirk compared that to injuries resulted from cows, that number. We're here today to discuss fireworks, not cows. So it's time to act. It's time to place greater and tighter controls on the sale and import of fireworks. And I look forward to hearing the Minister's response to this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr Allen. I call Alex McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today, and I would like to thank the member for Keighley and Ilkley on presenting this important debate on behalf of the Petitions Committee. I would also like to thank the 285 Gloucester residents who signed the petition and the scores more who have emailed me about this issue. Fireworks are a hallmark of celebrations around the world and in my constituency of Gloucester. From Eid, Chinese New Year and Diwali to Bonfire Night and New Year's Eve, for many they symbolise moments of unity, happiness and cultural expression. However, I understand that for many others, the sight and sound of fireworks are not so warmly received. Like many members in this debate today, I have received dozens of emails from constituents in Gloucester expressing their concerns about the use of fireworks. Some have written to me to highlight the risks they pose to the well-being and safety of pets and wild animals. Others have expressed concern about the effects fireworks may have on those with PTSD, respiratory conditions and people with autism and Down syndrome who may be more sensitive to loud noises. Additionally, many of my constituents have raised concerns regarding the use of fireworks to commit crime. I share all of these concerns, and I know I'm not alone in this House, as demonstrated in today's debate. From the several public petitions I have seen, I know that the concerns I hear in Gloucester are echoed across the entire country. This issue is not confined to my constituency, but resonates nationwide. But sadly, in Gloucester, there have been a number of crimes involving the use of fireworks, including fireworks being posted through letterboxes and set off in people's front gardens. This is incredibly dangerous, as we've heard from the cases raised from the gallery today. We need to tackle this surge in antisocial behaviour, and I'm pleased the government has set out its commitment to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour in all of our communities. I'm also concerned about the pressure we place on our emergency services. Last year on Bonfire Night weekend, people sought advice for burn injuries from the NHS every 21 seconds. The fire service is under immense pressure too, responding to frequent call-outs regarding to fireworks. This is particularly concerning as we have lost almost a fifth of the fire service workforce under the last government, further exacerbating the strain on our service. I'm also saddened to hear about the effects the fireworks have on our wildlife and pets who suffer as a result. But as a father of a 1-year-old, a rather sleepless one-year-old. I would also like to highlight the struggle of parents with young children who just want a few peaceful hours' sleep. We must find a balance, one that allows people to enjoy fireworks while ensuring that this enjoyment does not negatively impact others. We need thoughtful and considerate legislation, and we as individuals must be mindful of the impact our actions have on those around us. Now, it's clear from the debate that the current regulation and enforcement do not work. I am particularly persuaded by the articulate arguments made by members from across the House for lowering the decibel limits to 90 decibels in accordance with other international comparators. I'm pleased that the government will work with businesses and charities to inform any future fireworks policy. We must ensure that legislation on the use and sale of fireworks keeps the public safe, prevents the misuse of fireworks and protects our pets and wildlife. Thank you.
Eccles.
Fireworks are used all over the world as a way of celebrating different events and bring enjoyment to many. However, fireworks now continue throughout the winter season, not just on bonfire night, Diwali, New Year, Chinese New Year, and fireworks can cause significant injury and fear for people and animals. And their increased use makes it difficult to predict and prepare. Almost 200 of my constituents have signed across the two petitions we are debating today, and I know many more share the sentiment. Last week, I met up with former Stourbridge councillor Karen Shakespeare, who has campaigned tirelessly over 15 years for a change in the law on fireworks. Her dog Henry is petrified of fireworks, and a single bang will send him into a panic, and he cannot be soothed for many hours after. Karen has previously submitted motions to Dudley Council calling for a change to regulations and local displays, as well as lobbying the Office of Public Protections along with the RSPCA. In Dudley Borough, the main fireworks display takes place at Himley Hall, a site surrounded by farmland and woodland, with additional local displays happening at various sports grounds. Karen and I would like to see a move towards alternative displays such as drone displays, which would eliminate noise and environmental impact while offering a high-quality display that could increase attendance and profit for the event. George, the Stourbridge Station cat, told me that during fireworks season, he is not allowed out on patrol in case he gets startled. His colleague Simone's greyhound gets really distressed to the point of refusing to eat and shaking and panting for hours. Ahead of this debate, I reached out to several local animal rescues, including Cats Matter, Stour Valley Cat Rescue and Stourbridge RSPCA, who all told me their animals can become traumatised by fireworks, and they all cited making preparations well ahead of the 5th of November due to random fireworks set off weeks before and after. All of the rescues make efforts to drown out the noise by closing curtains and leaving a radio or television on, but it's difficult to negate all the noise as fireworks can go off at all times of the day. There is a constant worry about the potential for major stress and heart attacks, especially for rabbits and other small mammals. Horses, farm livestock, wildlife and birds die every year because of fireworks being set off for our enjoyment. One rescue told me about Coco the cat, who developed feline idiopathic cystitis as a direct result of fireworks. FIC is an inflammation of the bladder caused through stress, and it is extremely painful for the cat. There is no cure, only management of the condition and making the animal less stressed. It can take weeks to settle down after a flare-up, and Coco struggles to go to the toilet. It is visibly painful for her, and she cries out to her owner. The vet prescribes pain relief, but unpredictable fireworks make it difficult to avoid. I've also heard reports of foxes running into roads in front of cars, birds falling out of trees, and even badgers falling off walls in a bid to rush for safety. The Guide Dogs charity say that around a quarter of guide dog owners report their animals showing signs of distress when they see or hear fireworks. The organisation works hard to socialise the dogs and expose them to fireworks noise using recordings, but even so, some dogs will take longer to recover from unexpected loud sounds, and this can restrict the usual activities of guide dog owners during the fireworks season. As well as the clear impact on animals, there is a significant effect on the NHS dealing with fireworks-related injuries. During my own NHS career, I have seen many life-changing injuries, often on young people, caused by irresponsible use of fireworks. And these injuries range from minor burns to loss of fingers, limbs and sight. In 2024, how can we think it is okay to sell explosives at the local shop? It simply doesn't make sense. The Scottish Government has introduced tighter regulation around the sale, but I believe any change in the law in England and Wales should build on the Scottish example and aim to go further. The Petitions Committee carried out an extensive inquiry into fireworks back in 2019, where they concluded that they could not support an outright ban on the public use and buying of fireworks. However, the committee stated that inconsiderate and irresponsible use of fireworks should be considered as socially unacceptable as drink driving. The current petitions are calling for all fireworks in the UK to require the user to obtain a licence, with the aims of reducing public noise, nuisance, preventing crime and disorder, improving public safety and protecting people and animals from harm. A licensing system would allow sales to continue without affecting the industry and eliminate concerns of black market sales. Introduction of licences would increase public education on fireworks safety and prevent impulse buying. I fully support the recommendations put forward by the RSPCA, the Social Market Foundation, and the licensing proposals put forward by Firework Campaign UK. And these include reducing the maximum decibel level, limiting the sale of category F1 and F2 fireworks, and designating firework-free zones in areas where fireworks are likely to have a greater impact on animals, the environment, and vulnerable people. Local authorities have a unique opportunity to showcase alternatives such as drone displays, light shows and quieter fireworks, and lead the way by setting an example for others to follow. This would help increase the popularity of alternatives and encourage suppliers to stock them. Thank you.
Thank you. I call John Grady.
Thank you, Mr Mundell, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I thank the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for his opening, which covered very many of the points that I would make myself. And of course, I would adopt wholeheartedly everything mentioned by my neighbour, the Honourable Member for Glasgow South West. Bonfire Night brings great joy to people across the west coast of Scotland, and for the most part, people use fireworks safely. However, it remains a significant problem in Glasgow and the west of Scotland. I recently met with a constituent who's worked for very many years at Edinburgh Zoo, and one of her responsibilities has been looking after the red pandas and the black and white pandas at the zoo. And she explained to me how the death of the two pandas came about, and there is no doubt that the causation lies with fireworks in Edinburgh. So that constituent of mine, like her colleagues, is absolutely heartbroken at what's become of the red panda. And fireworks cause misery for people with PTSD, young parents, people with autism, animals and people across Glasgow. We need to think about how we manage and regulate fireworks, because clearly in Scotland and across our family of nations it is not working, and whilst fireworks bring joy, it's also bringing misery to very many communities. One thing that's happened in Glasgow is that the major public displays, in particular in Glasgow Green, have been cancelled by the SNP Council. And the reason for this has never been fully explained, but we do need to give people opportunities to see fireworks, and councils cancelling them without explaining it will not help. Restricting the use of fireworks is in the main devolved to the Scottish Government, and I regret to say that whilst there has been legislative reform in this area, it has not been an unalloyed success. The flagship measure was the introduction of a licensing system, but that has been postponed to at least 2026, the Scottish Government say, due to resourcing issues. Well, this government has provided £4.9 billion to the Scottish Government, so hopefully they will start to make some progress on introducing this much-needed reform that will prevent misery being inflicted on my constituents and others in Glasgow. The legislation also included firework control zones, and one was to be introduced in Glasgow, in the neighbouring seat to mine, This was bungled by the SNP Council because they simply didn't use the correct time period for the notice. As every trainee lawyer knows, you have to count the days for a notice properly if it's going to be effective. So this has caused misery for my constituents and the constituents of my dear friend, the member for Glasgow South West. A basic error. There is much hard work by council officials, the fire services and the police to deal with fireworks in Glasgow. However, the legislation is not working, it's not properly implemented, and it's not being properly implemented. How can it be that in Edinburgh they can't introduce an exclusion zone for fireworks around a zoo with many animals? How can it be that we can't review the introduction of exclusion zones around things like hospitals and so forth? Clearly the legislation isn't properly implemented, isn't properly drafted, and requires thorough review. I actually am a big fan of fireworks. I love fireworks. But my enjoyment of fireworks should not inflict misery on animals and people in my communities of Glasgow East. It is time clearly in Glasgow and in Scotland and across England and Wales for us to review how our fireworks are regulated. There have been very many good ideas about how to improve the system in this debate, and there is much pause for thought and much to consider and much to learn from every contribution to this debate. However, the current situation, Mr Mundell, is not sustainable, and I submit it is high time that both the Scottish Government and the English Government looked at this again. I'm obliged, Mr Mundell. Thank you.
I'm going to call Lizzie Collins, followed by Patrick Hurley. If there's anyone else who has not been called and wishes to speak, if they can indicate that to me. Lizzie.
Thank you very much, Mr Mundell, and it's a pleasure to serve here today under your chairship. And I thank the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for bringing this important debate. I want to speak about the impact of fireworks on my constituents in Morecambe and Lunesdale. Firstly, I do have to, unfortunately, declare an interest, as I absolutely love fireworks. I can't get enough of them. I'm also a heavy metal fan, so maybe I just like loud bangs in the dark. However, hearing from constituents who are deeply affected by the weeks and weeks of fireworks we get at certain times of the year has persuaded me that we do need this debate. Constituents tell me of terrified animals and of terrified humans. And they tell me, excuse me, Mr Chair, they tell me about the weeks of fireworks surrounding bonfire night and New Year's Eve. And the fact that, because it is weeks and weeks, it gives them no opportunity to plan and to feel safe. So my joy in those fireworks is their terror. Now, what specific action needs to be taken is up for debate. The petitions have asked for a ban on sales of fireworks to the public, and there are excellent arguments for that made here today and through the petitions. Now, initially, I was instinctively reluctant to even consider a ban on all public sales as a first step, because whilst fireworks can be deeply harmful, they also bring families and communities together in celebration. I thought, is there an alternative, maybe limiting the amount of days per year that fireworks are allowed, so bonfire night and the nearest Saturday, and replicate that across the year for important events such as New Year or Diwali? Would enforcing this ruthlessly and alongside age verification allow people the freedom to enjoy fireworks, but also have the desired impact of minimising harm? Because my constituents tell me that if they can plan for the fireworks, that does minimise the harm. It wouldn't be so bad. But I found myself, as I wrote this speech, really thinking this through. And on balance, having heard the stories of fireworks being used as weapons, and having heard the harrowing story of the Smiths, I believe it's right to look at all options for regulating the sales of fireworks. A change in regulation may also bring market incentive to develop more options and to develop cheaper options such as silent fireworks, drones or laser shows. This would allow families to come together to enjoy the show, but also protect people and pets from some of the devastating impacts of the misuse of fireworks. Thank you, Mr Mundell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I'd also like to thank the petitioners and the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for bringing today's debate. And I'd also like to thank the Petition Committee for their decision to hold today's debate on firework regulation. Like many of us have said today, I love fireworks myself, and I certainly don't think that they should be banned. In my own constituency of Southport, we are proud to host the British Musical Fireworks Championship every year in Victoria Park. Often a sight to behold, it always features excellent displays. But that's the point, because they are displays. They are specialised and they are regulated. They have many technicians on hand to ensure their safety, and specialised explosive technicians setting off the displays. Indeed, neither the petitions nor the member for Luton North's proposed bill is calling for a total ban on fireworks. They both celebrate the enjoyment that the majority of people feel from fireworks displays. But I'm sympathetic to the idea that our current framework does not do enough to protect people and animals, and allows fireworks to be used dangerously and irresponsibly. If we look at the current regulations, the allowance for unlicensed traders to sell category F2 and F3 fireworks over a month around bonfire night, as well as during New Year and Chinese New Year and Diwali, is excessive. It means that over this period, there are widespread firework displays over the entire month, which disproportionately affects our vulnerable groups in society. One such group is our veterans, many of whom are suffering from PTSD or other forms of distress from fighting for our country. And during the period of remembrance, as it is so close to bonfire night, we are putting our veterans under further pressure currently. The charity Combat Stress has recorded a higher rate of distressed veterans accessing their services during the period around bonfire night due to the whistles, the bangs, and all of the paraphernalia reminding them of past trauma. And whilst I welcome the government's support for veterans and attempts to provide more services for veterans' health through NHS England, this enhanced distress could be stopped by shifting the balance more in favour of regulating fireworks sales. Alongside this, the effect of excessive fireworks displays on our pets and animals is saddening. We are a nation of animal lovers, but the effects of fireworks on animals are well documented. According to the Kennel Club, 1 in 5 dogs shows signs of distress. And Cats Protection reported that in 2024, 64% of cat owners felt that fireworks had negatively impacted their cats. There is also a serious risk of the current regulations allowing for the irresponsible use of fireworks. NHS England has reported that there were 113 firework-related injuries in 2023 to 24. Most of these injuries happen at family events, amateur displays, due to the widespread availability of most fireworks. Back in 2020, the Chief Constable and the Chief Fire Officer for Lancashire, with oversight for part of my constituency, spoke out about introducing regulations similar to those proposed by the petition today, due to attacks on the police which had been suffered from fireworks being launched at them. Our emergency services should be able to go about their lives without fear of being attacked. More recently, we saw that this summer, with riots in the summer and attacks on our police officers had fireworks shot at them. One way to clamp down on such extreme attacks on our emergency services would be to reduce the availability of fireworks. Yeah. We can minimise the impact on our vulnerable groups in society by supporting some of the regulations in this petition. We should be limiting the sale of F2 and F3 fireworks to licensed fireworks shops only, and encouraging those wanting to have displays to be recognised as fireworks safe handlers and technicians. Against this backdrop, I welcome the public bringing forward this issue to Parliament, and specifically, I welcome the member for Luton North's proposed fireworks bill, which does introduce many of the changes which we've talked about this afternoon, and I hope that it gets the time for debate and discussion on the floor of the Commons chamber. Concluding, I welcome the government's commitment to monitoring this situation, and I look forward to hearing the Minister's comments later in the debate. Thank you, Mr Mundell.
Thank you. And I now call Sarah Gibson, the Lib Dem spokesperson.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to thank the member as well for Keighley and Ilkley for bringing this important debate. It's also grateful to the Petitions Committee for ensuring that the sale and use of fireworks will receive the parliamentary scrutiny. I'd also like to join colleagues in welcoming those who are in the public gallery today and those at home who signed petitions and who are watching us debate this important matter. As other colleagues have done, please let me add my condolences to Alan and his family for the very distressing story that we heard earlier. Overall, 161 people in my constituency signed the petition to ban the general sale of fireworks, at least to limit their sale to licensed holders. And I take their views very seriously, not only because my own dog, Rhea, who is absolutely terrified of fireworks, as we mentioned earlier, all gun dogs are, or at least in my experience. And I have to say my childhood love of fireworks has paled in seeing the fear that she experiences. I rescued this little puppy from Spain and was desperately trying to settle her in, unfortunately during fireworks season. And while trying to move her from a safe space, a neighbour's firework landed on a tin roof in my garden. So my neighbour's garden was really not big enough for the firework display that they thought that they should have. That explosion and the landing of it on the tin roof was such a nightmare that she disappeared off into a frozen night, not to be found until lunchtime the following day by some very kind neighbours some 5 miles away who found her the other side of a river. So my story is lucky, although a much thinner dog, and a constantly terrified dog from the years onwards. So it's perfectly understandable why constituents of mine and the RSPCA and other leading charities are so concerned about the impact that fireworks have on all animals. I'd also like to give my thanks to the member for Edinburgh East and the members for Keighley and Ilkley for raising the plight of the baby panda in Edinburgh Zoo who died from a stress-related firework use. My honourable friend from Hazel Grove also highlighted the impacts have not just on pets, but on our natural environment more broadly. And her reference to the Australian approach was particularly insightful, and I hope the government will reflect on the suggestions. As many colleagues have expressed today, namely my honourable friend for Cheadle and members for Eastleigh, fireworks can pose a serious challenge to those with any post-traumatic stress disorders, particularly veterans. I also know from participating in the Parliamentary Armed Forces Scheme and through meeting many veterans in my constituency of Chippenham that it is this unexpected fireworks that cause a particular stress. And as the Chief Executive of Combat Stress, Chloe McKay, has rightly pointed out, if we give people more notice that the fireworks are planned, then those with PTSD will be able to put in coping mechanisms and prepare in advance. In conclusion, although not completely convinced that more primary legislation is necessarily the right way to minimise firework disruption, the Liberal Democrats do support existing measures to minimise the disruption that can be the result of firework use. We also open to the limit of the maximum noise levels of fireworks, especially those sold to the public for private displays. I thought my neighbour, the member for Salisbury, who is unfortunately no longer with us, made a good point that prioritising education to the wider public would be a good way to more effectively reduce the damage that they have in our communities. The member for Newport East mentioned that her local council do great work to educate the local public on how fireworks safety works, and particularly on bonfire night. What is clear from today's debate is that the UK must engage with more in-depth consultation with both businesses who sell the fireworks and those who are affected by the disruption and the danger they can cause. It's important we recognise how much more powerful fireworks are since the days when my father bought his box of sprinklers and some rockets. The Liberal Democrats look forward to the second reading of the private member's bill introduced by the member for Luton North, and I hope that the debate generated and the attention that this so rightly deserves. Thank you, Chair.
I call Andrew Griffiths on behalf of the opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and what a pleasure to be part of this very substantial debate that we've had here today, the largest debate that I've ever had the privilege of being part of as a result of a petition moved enormously ably by my honourable friend, the member for Keighley, and clearly of something of great concern across the House, including in my own constituency of Arundel and South Downs, where many people, including myself, are great lovers of dogs. We have those beautiful South Downs in which we can fortunately exercise our dogs, but also so many horse owners. It's a big area of equestrian ownership. And so I'm very familiar myself, Mr Chairman, with the real challenges of having unlicensed explosives able to be deployed for, as many members here have said today, a very significant part of the year. It seems like it lasts for all of the autumn months. And we also heard how they are bigger and louder than before. It's a little bit like policemen getting younger, but I'm told this is objectively the case, that as we get older, fireworks, in fact, are bigger and louder than before. Let me congratulate the petitioners, Chloe Brindley and Alan Smith, and in particular, if Chloe doesn't mind, highlighting Alan's bravery in highlighting an issue that has real personal resonance for him and his family. He bravely shared his story, and his Member of Parliament, the Member of Parliament for Hornchurch and Upminster, my honourable friend, I think really gave great justice to that and did exactly what this debate is all about. And it is clear, sir, that no action is not the answer. It is clear that, as we've heard on different sides of the House, that I really hope the government is listening. And whilst in my party, and I think many members on both sides, including some of the petitions, a ban should not perhaps be a first resort, but it shouldn't be off the table as a last resort. And in the meantime, what we've heard very significantly is a real inadequacy in some of the compliance measures. We've heard a large menu from which I'd invite the government to respond, and I appreciate sometimes it's not always easier for a minister at the dispatch box here and now, and if we're left a little bit wanting, perhaps he'd be so kind as to take this away for further consideration, because again, as honourable members have mentioned, this is not the first time that this House has sought to put in place greater protection. We heard about the lack of sentences for selling, without which that particular tragedy may not have happened. And yes, we know that our police and our blue light forces are under great pressure, but we also know that to govern is to choose, and all of us have to make choices within limited resources, and it would be good to see this particular area of criminality targeted. We heard about a menu of opportunities to tighten up on regulations, on restriction on stockpiling fireworks. Mr. Chairman, you know, as somebody who, whilst maybe concerned about us rushing to a ban to deny the enjoyment that we heard about from my friend from Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk, it's also true that what possible reason could there be for people to be stockpiling explosive fireworks potentially in residential premises. That feels, to me, Mr Chairman, an area that could be looked at again. And indeed, the same would be true to the age limit on purchase. All of those seem, without answering those questions for the government, all of those seem areas that are worthy of this House exploring in more detail. And I would suspect some of those measures is couched in the right way and evidence-led and with the right impact assessments are things that could potentially attract support from across the House. So let me conclude there. We've had some really substantial contributions from our part as the opposition. We hear loud and clear. I commend all involved, and this seems to me has been an excellent use of the House's time. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to see you in the chair this afternoon. And I think just following on from the Shadow Secretary of State's comments, this has been a very good debate. I think there have been a very wide range of suggestions put forward. We had 20 backbench speeches this afternoon from the members from Newport East, Hazel Grove, Luton North, Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk, Brentford and Isleworth, Cheadle, Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Hornchurch and Upminster, Bexley Heath and Crayford, Bradford East, Wolverhampton, North East, Edinburgh West, Glasgow South West, Eastleigh, Edinburgh South West, Gloucester, Stourbridge, Glasgow East, Morecambe and Lonsdale and Southport. I think that was quite a good spread across the aisles, and I think that really shows actually that this is something that affects everyone in this great nation of ours. And I think everyone spoke with great passion, great insight actually into how this affects individuals. And I think there was, as I say, a real range of suggestions about what might be done. But I'd like to start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ilkley for leading today's important debate. I think he set out very well the balance of issues that we have to take into account when considering these matters, and I think that the subject brings a lot of dreadful impacts into people, and I think he really highlighted those as well. And just so we know that the two petitions we are debating are ban the sale of fireworks to the general public and limit the sale and use of fireworks to licence holders only. And I joined the Shadow Secretary of State in paying tribute to Chloe Brindley and Alan Smith for their work in helping get this petition debated today. I think it's shown that there is appetite for looking at this issue from across the House. And I know from my own postbag as a constituency member and indeed as a member of the government that it is a widespread issue of concern. So first of all, I'd like to express my condolences to the family of Josephine Smith, who, as we know, sadly passed away following the placing of a firework through her letterbox. And I think that the tragic story as conveyed by the Honourable Member for Hornchurch and Upminster really brought home what the consequences of deliberate misuse of fireworks can be. And I think when we heard from her about how the CCTV caught those responsible talking about what they might be doing with that, I can't imagine how difficult that must have been to view, and how irresponsible that behaviour appears to all of us. And I think that the Honourable Member for Hornchurch and Upminster really conveyed very well the thoughts of Mr Smith, and he asked for a sensible and respectful debate. I certainly believe that we've had one of those today, and I can assure him that we will meet in the new year, and we will continue to engage on this in a sensible and respectful way, because there are, I think, a lot of things to explore in what he has said. I will briefly refer to my honourable friend, the member for Luton North's speech, because I think she has got the attention of a lot of members with her private members' bill, and she highlighted what is arguably an illogical approach to licensing at the moment. And I think she also mentioned really the challenge of enforcement, which I think was something that all members spoke about. I think it's clear many members actually felt that the enforcement regime isn't working as it should do, and there may be a number of reasons for that. She also mentioned, of course, the impact on children with special educational needs, on guide dogs, and indeed also mentioned the impact of online sales, which, of course, when this was last legislated for, was not something that we really were cognizant of, and I think those were important points. I also want to mention the speech from the Honourable Member for Edinburgh West, who is not in her place now, but, of course, she's the constituency member for Edinburgh Zoo, where Roxy the Panda Cub sadly died, and I think, of course, that really graphically brings home, doesn't it, the impact that fireworks can have on animals. And she was right to highlight the irony of the zoo doing its utmost to protect an endangered species, having to lose that animal through the acts, the deliberate and possibly unthinking acts of humans. So there are, I think, many elements to this. We must recognise that for many people, and indeed animals, noise and disruption can be challenging. And of course that is why we've had this debate today. That is why many people have signed the petition. But we must also recognise, as several members referred to, that for many people who use and enjoy fireworks responsibly, they are an important part of their life. That allow them to enjoy celebrations with families and friends, and of course as part of the wider community. We know they are a popular product. We estimate that the industry is valued at £200 million a year, and research published by the Social Market Foundation showed that 77% of the public like fireworks a lot or somewhat. And I think, as the honourable friend, the member for Bexleyheath and Crayford South said, about 14 million Britons plan to have their own displays each year, which is a significant number of people. However, this research also said only 15% of people in Great Britain want the regulations to stay as they are, and I think it was clear from the debate a lot of members also share that view. And as the Honourable Member for Stourbridge mentioned, there is potential for alternatives, the use of light displays, drones and lasers, and that alternative was also highlighted in the Social Market Foundation report. As members have referred to, the Petitions Committee launched an inquiry on the sale and use of fireworks in 2019, and that gave people the opportunity to raise their concerns. I believe it attracted more than 350 written submissions, and the committee did make a number of recommendations but did not in the end advocate for a total ban on fireworks. I think they recognised there was a concern that doing so would create a black market, and we must also, I think, when we look at the possibility of a total ban, recognise that there is already an extensive regulatory framework in existence for this product. And I think we should also recognise that, particularly in Scotland, there has been a number of developments in terms of trying to regulate this, and I did listen with great interest actually to what the members for Glasgow South West and Edinburgh South West in particular said about their experiences of that system. They both actually talked about the horrendous injuries police officers and other public servants have, and why it's so important for them to be able to get control of this issue. And I think when my honourable friend, the member for Edinburgh South West, said that a lot of this is just lawlessness, I think that really did hit the nail on the head, and that feels such a long way away from the displays that many members talked about from their youth, how we go from that innocent, joyful experience to downright anarchy is a sad indictment, I'm afraid. I also noted what he said, that there was a question about whether these exclusion zones had been as effective as we would have liked. I think the honourable member for Glasgow East suggested that actually the application of them hadn't really been as good as we would have liked. There are certainly things that we need to look at in terms of the experience of Glasgow and Edinburgh so far, and understand whether that tool is one that is fit for purpose. So, as members will know, under the Fireworks Act 2003, the Fireworks Regulations 2004 introduced a package of measures to reduce the nuisance and injuries caused by the misuse of fireworks, which forms part of the broader public concern with the problems of antisocial behaviour. As we know, there is an 11 p.m. curfew for the use of fireworks, with later exceptions only for the traditional firework periods of 5th of November, Diwali, New Year's Eve, and in Chinese New Year, as well as for local authority displays, celebrations and events. In addition, the Pyrotechnic Articles Safety Regulations 2015 include a 120 decibel noise limit on fireworks available to consumers. And of course, it should be said that the majority of people who use fireworks do so appropriately and have a sensible and responsible attitude towards them. But as we've heard tonight, too many people are using them in a dangerous, inconsiderate or antisocial manner. The police, local authorities and other local agencies do have a range of tools and powers that they can use to respond to antisocial behaviour. These include the use of use of fireworks through the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act of 2014, and even going further back to the Explosive Act of 1875. That creates an offence to throw, cast or fire a firework into a highway, street, thoroughfare or public place, demonstrating that this is sadly not a new problem. Members have referred to the different categories of fireworks. I think it's worth just setting out that retailers must not sell low or medium hazard fireworks, known as F2 and F3 fireworks, to anyone under the age of 18. Category F1, which are classed as very low hazard, cannot be sold to anyone under the age of 16. F4 fireworks are the most hazardous and can only be sold to those with specialist knowledge who can demonstrate having undertaken training recognised in the fireworks business and hold valid liability insurance. It is also an offence for anyone under the age of 18 to possess an F2, F3 or F4 firework in a public place, or for anyone to possess an F4 firework unless it is for specified professional reasons. These offences could attract a £90 on-the-spot fine or, on summary conviction, up to 6 months imprisonment or an unlimited fine. Retailers are restricted to only selling consumer fireworks during a limited period around each of the seasonal celebrations that I've already mentioned. Retailers may only supply fireworks to the public outside of these periods if they obtain a licence from their local licensed authority. So fireworks are available at less available to purchase outside of the seasons. There are storage limits and strict rules around how and where fireworks are stored in business premises, and certainly the experience from the Honourable Member for Bedford and Isleworth suggests that that was not how they should be adhered to, but I will give way to my honourable friend now.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I really welcome his thorough response. On that point of loosening the licensing laws to accommodate other sellers to be able to sell fireworks during times when people actually want to buy them for periods such as this that we've just seen, the fireworks night, and for New Year's, does that not seem a perverse way of doing things when actually if the majority of people are buying fireworks, they should be doing so from licensed, reputable sellers?
Thank my honourable friend for her intervention. I think that is a point I've already recognised and acknowledged. I think there is a slight incongruity about how that works. That's something we will obviously consider as we move forward. As I was saying, Mr Mundell, local authority trading standards do work with retailers to ensure fireworks are sold safely, and they do have powers to enforce. Again, we've heard about whether that is sufficient at the moment. Trading standards can also enforce against those selling fireworks without an appropriate licence, for example, outside the normal selling period. But it is clear from this debate that some members feel that current legislation is not only inadequate, that it's also not being enforced properly. So a number of members mentioned the issue of noise. We recognise the impact of fireworks on vulnerable people, including veterans and those with post-traumatic stress disorder and animals. This, along with antisocial use, is a key concern I've heard on a number of occasions. So this year, I did launch a fireworks campaign to provide guidance on minimising the negative impacts of fireworks. I believe this campaign was well received on social media and shared by our key enforcement partners, but of course those who are determined to cause trouble, those who don't have any respect for others, will not take heed of this. But various animal charities have also published guidance on how to protect animals during the fireworks season, and we will continue to work collaboratively with animal welfare organisations alongside other charities to ensure this messaging reaches the public. UK fireworks retailers... Yep, certainly will.
Dr. Arthur. So, and thank you for giving way, because I know time is moving on. But, it's really sure to hear about that campaign. But it'd be good to get a commitment to publish any analysis how that campaign went. Because if the campaign hasn't worked, perhaps then we need to go even further next year.
Grateful for that intervention. It's been the first time for a number of years that the campaign has actually taken place. So hopefully there will be a baseline of evidence we can look to. But I will commit to write to him and see what we can actually elicit from officials in respect of that. So, as we say, Mr Mundell, UK fireworks retailers support the voluntary fireworks code, which contains advice on safety and considerate use. Many lower noise firework products, those around 90 decibels or below, are on the market already, with consumers recognising that as an option, and I hope that that is something that continues to grow. And intelligence that has been shared does show that some considerate supermarket retailers are now stocking these low noise fireworks, and some are actually refusing to stock them altogether. Testing commissioned by the Office of Product Safety and Standards has found that consumer firework products have a very high compliance to the 120 decibel limit that is set out in law. So we don't have an issue, I think, with the products. It is about where the law sets them. So many people have raised concerns about the noise and disruption caused by fireworks, but they often recognise that displays have a contribution to make to community groups up and down the country, often raising money for good causes. And this was a point noted by the Petition Committee in 2019. And they noted that these community displays have widespread local support and increased community cohesion. The committee also noted potential unintended consequences of a ban on fireworks, such as substantial economic effects on the industry and the risk of a black market, which the National Fire Chiefs Council and the National Police Chiefs Council raised in their evidence to the inquiry. So there is a lot to consider in the picture, but we do recognise the strength of feeling that some people have towards fireworks and the negative impact that can be experienced by some groups in society. I recognise the strength of feeling and the need for effective regulation in this area. We must recognise the place of fireworks in culture and community celebrations and consider carefully any unintended consequences. And I would acknowledge that this has been raised in the debate. There is a paucity of evidence at the moment about the effectiveness of current regulations. So I am committed, Mr Mundell, to engaging with all stakeholders to understand these issues, including businesses, consumer groups and charities, to inform any future decisions in this area. The safety of the public and the impact on people and animals will be paramount in these considerations, and I hope we will continue to have this dialogue as we move forward.
Thank you, Minister. And I call Robbie Moore to wind up the debate.
Thank you very much, Mr Mundell. And can I say on behalf of the Petitions Committee how grateful we are both to Chloe Brindley and to Alan Smith for very kindly putting their effort in bringing forward these petitions, which gathered so much support in a very relatively short period of time before we've been debating it today. So on behalf of the Petitions Committee, I'd very much like to say thank you. And can I also extend my condolences once again to yourself, Alan, who's in the public gallery, for the very tragic circumstances on which your mother lost her life. And can I also say a huge thank you to all honourable and right honourable members for their contributions in this debate. We've heard from members from Glasgow, from Edinburgh, all across the country, right the way down to members representing Luton and, of course, Keighley and Ilkley. Because it is a matter that we are being contacted on behalf of our constituents, because it impacts us all, whether you're a parent with a newborn or working people that just want to get a decent night's sleep at night, or whether you're a veteran suffering with anxiety issues, or whether your pets or wildlife are being impacted. It is fireworks, when they are misused, are impacting us all. And of course, all of us in this debate have mentioned the challenging circumstances around antisocial behaviour, because they are explosives, as was referenced quite eloquently by the honourable member. These are explosives that are being purchased, and therefore there is a specific request that on common themes that have come up from all members, that we must push the government for stronger licensing, for noise reduction that is associated for fireworks, for specific restrictions around sale, for further enforcement powers that are given to our police and our local authorities, so that they have the ability to properly enforce legislation that is in existence or that further comes down the line. And can I, on behalf of the Petitions Committee, as it is my duty to do so on behalf of the petitioner as well, to urge the government to act. We've heard very kind words from the government that we're listening, we're reviewing and summarising existing legislation that is in place. But we do wish the government to go much further on those 5 points that have been allocated, and I hope that the government and the Minister in his further exchanges with not only the petitioners but members across the House will endeavour to do so and listen to those points that have been very strongly made by all members in today's debate.
Thank you. The question is that this House has considered E-petitions 639319 and 700013 relating to the sale and use of fireworks. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.